Hey, welcome back. It's 3 o'clock and it's time to resume our discussion. We're talking about applying for credit and the underwriting process. So let's finish our conversation. I'm going to moderate the conversation real quick, guys. We're going to move on. So, when a person applies for credit, they've got to furnish to the creditor all kinds of information. Usually, that creditor wants to see things like 2 years of tax returns, 2 years of banking records, including checking and savings accounts, a list of all assets and valuables that the borrower is going to be using or has access to. They want signed permission to check their credit history so they can run their FICO credit scores. And upon doing so, make a judgment about their ability to borrow. Also, they're going to be checking your reference sources. They're going to check that current bank statement, that current pay stub. They're going to call your employer. Are they actually working? They're going to verify all this information. It takes some time. So when you provide all this documentation to a bank, what they do typically is give it to their research department called the underwriters in the company. Underwriters are the risk analyzers for the bank. By reviewing your credentials, your credit scores, your borrowing history, your bank activity, your tax returns, your income sources and values and assets, they determine what kind of risk you pose by them giving you money. And they're going to review all this stuff as a basis of determining, is this person worthy of borrowing money from us? Then if they make a decision that it looks good, they're going to want to know what house or what kind of property they're buying and how much of a mortgage are they going to be entitled to. So now, a couple little terms you have to be aware of. As a listing agent who lists property, I would hold open houses for buyers to come. And when buyers show up, I typically had a question for them, and that is, have you been pre-approved for a mortgage yet? And a good number of them say, yes, I'm already pre-approved. I'm like, great. Do you have your commitment or the mortgage approval letter from the mortgage company? And they go, oh, no, I'm pre-qualified. What does that mean, pre-qualified? Well, I went to one of those, quote, online sources. They asked me a couple questions. I answered them online. And guess what? I can buy a $500,000 house now. Well, Mr. Borrower, I hate to burst your bubble, but pre-qualification means absolutely nothing, believe it or not. What do you mean? They told me I could buy a $500,000 house. Yes, but did they check your tax returns for 2 years? No. Did they check your banking records for a minimum of the past 2 years? No. Did they verify your income? No. How about your expenses? Did they qualify that? No. Do they even know that oh yeah, I told them I have a job and how much money they make? But what else did they ask? That's it. That's it. So your pre-qualification is just like that letter you got from American Express that says you're pre-approved for a credit card. Just fill out the accompanying application form, and once confirmed, we will send you a card, meaning you have to do a full-blown application to actually get approved for a credit card. Just like a mortgage, you have to supply all the documentation and go through the underwriting process to be approved to get mortgages. So really, Mr. Buyer, what you're saying is that you'd like to buy a house, you think you can buy, but without a mortgage approval, you don't know if you can buy. And that, my friends, is the fact. So when I would work with buyers, one of the first things I ever did was sit them down with a mortgage guy and have them do a full-blown mortgage application so that I would know within a matter of a week or two whether they can buy or not and to what level. So if I saw a house for sale, my buyer was the best buyer that the seller saw because they've already been approved for a mortgage. Where the other ones are just pre-qualified or pre-approved through some lending source that really means nothing. So getting an approval means everything for the buyer as far as their buying power and their ability to pay. So be wary of those pre-qualifications out there. They actually mean nothing. FICO scores, another thing that is researched by the underwriters to determine your credit worthiness. You have 3 credit scores: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Do you know your 3 credit scores? And if you do, good for you. If you don't, then you better learn what they are. According to the federal law, every person in the United States has the right to investigate their credit at least once a year for free. You go to creditkarma.com or any other place, you can check your credit for free once a year. Now, as a businessman, I usually use my Discover card for business, and every month I get my Discover statement. It tells me what my credit scores are, as a matter of fact. So I can monitor the monthly in my credit card statement. So knowing your credit score is half the battle, because if your credit isn't that good, then you're not going to get very good lending terms from the bank. The better the credit score you have, the better the financing you're going to get. You have great credit, you're going to get the best interest rates and terms and conditions on a loan. You have a 600 credit score, you may be paying a lot more in interest and the tougher loan conditions to meet. So understand, guys, credit scores can be everything. In fact, they're so important today that some employers are using to determine if somebody should get a job or not. I'm being very serious here. Your credit score isn't very high, which means the corporation is led to believe you're not very trustworthy or responsibility with your things. Therefore, you're denied an opportunity with our company. That would be horrible to hear because of my credit score. So understand, guys, credit scores are very important, and you need to police them all the time to make sure that there's no derogatory or bad or false information on there. Qualifying ratios are a way to use current income and expense modeling from a person to determine if they may be able to get a loan without the assistance of a mortgage application. In other words, Mr. Buyer, if you don't have a mortgage application, let me run what's something called the qualifying ratio on you. I'm trying to determine if you have enough money to buy a house, and that, in fact, how much of a house you can buy. So what is your current monthly gross income? Then what are your current gross monthly expenses? Now take out your rent payment and then tell me how much is left over. As compared to your income, you may have anywhere between 28 and 36% of those expenses allowable for housing purchase money, the mortgage. Sometimes banks will go as high as 43% expense to income and still approve a loan, but that's rare. So understand, guys, by doing a quick off-the-cuff computation of income and expenses, I can determine how much they have money in a mortgage payment. I could figure out a purchase price and a loan payment, and then maybe find a house that's in their value range. But until I get the mortgage approval, I can't guarantee that they have the buying power to do that. So before I get into the secondary mortgage markets, did anybody have any follow-up questions to this credit application process? Anybody? All right, not seeing any questions, then let's move on. Government influence in the mortgage lending markets. So, Federal Reserve Bank. I'm going to open this up. Who is the Federal Reserve Bank? Anybody want to share with me who the Federal Reserve is? The bank for banks. That's a nice way to put it. But who are they? Central bank, a private company. The government. Well, Brian, to tell you the truth, no. Federal Reserve is not part of the U.S. government. To be more precise, Daniel is correct. It is a private company. Nobody knows. Well, the national bank who controls interest rates. Well, let's be more specific, James. The Federal Reserve is what is known as, quote, the central bank. They lend money to banks, they lend money to governments, they actually set economic policy in many countries. However, they're a private bank owned by families with the names of things like Rothschild And those names, Rockefellers, whoa, these are big ticket players. Yeah, they are. And they control the wealth of the economy in the world. And when they speak, nations stand to attention. Private company that has been ripping us off for decades. You may be more correct than not there, Daniel. So, all right, what Daniel said, right? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to moderate the conversation real quick here. So understand, guys, this is an organization that's a bank. This for sure, it's a bank because they lend a lot of money, but they're also economic advisors to nations. In fact, when the Federal Reserve spokesman stands up and says things like, the Federal Reserve is thinking about raising interest rates. If he makes a statement like that, within an hour, Wall Street crashes 300 points. Instantaneous reaction to the Federal Reserve the spoken word. Or if they say, we're thinking about lowering interest rates, market sells 300 points upwards. It's bizarre that the Federal Reserve has such power over Wall Street, but it does. So the Federal Reserve, the Fed, helps to maintain, quote, sound credit conditions and helps to try to counteract the effects of inflation. Well, they have been holding interest down for a very, very long time. In fact, it's lower now than historically it's ever been. So are there any economic students out there at all? And if so, what happens when you have a prolonged period of low interest rates? Anybody know what the result necessarily occurs after a given time? Yes, John, and yes, Dennis, inflation occurs. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Now I'm going to moderate here, but thanks for the input. I appreciate it. So now that interest rates have been held down for so long, and because we're in a very precarious situation with markets right now, where COVID has affected many things. In fact, at lunchtime or at the coffee break, I was able to sit with some of the principals in the organization of the brokers where I work, and we discussed what's going on in the real estate markets today. It's very speculative as to what may happen in the future. Right now, homes come on the market are being sold with 4 or 5 offers when the first hour comes on the market. At what point is there a tipping point where that no longer is feasible? When prices get too high that no one can afford them? Or will prices continually be driven up by the short supply and an over demand of inventory? We're experiencing a very unique market right now because of COVID-19, because of loss of jobs, because of influx of out-of-state buyers that are ripe with cash to buy. So things are looking pretty bleak for the regular guy to go out and buy an affordable home, because anybody who's coming from out of town is paying overpriced just to get something. I think we're seeing a bubble starting to occur in our markets. How long that's going to occur, I don't know. But what happens if in the next 6 months, COVID has been declared as under control, and we all try to return to, quote, normal? Well, 1/3 of all workers are already telecommuting on a permanent basis. They're not going to go back to the office, which means corporate office space will have to be reduced because of no demand, which means corporate property owners are going to be experiencing vacancy rates that they haven't experienced before. Combine that with the reduction of retail office space in the area that's being used. I mean, you're going to be looking at a very dysfunctional market, possibly. Now, I could be completely wrong. All right, pray to God I am, but I don't know, guys. The writing's on the wall right now to say things are afoot that may affect our business in a very speculative way. So that doesn't mean there's no future in real estate. I'm just saying it's just going to be more challenging. You know, in real estate in New Jersey, the Real Estate Commission and the real estate laws are 100 years old in 2021. It was formed in 1921. And for 100 years, it's worked pretty damn well. And yes, markets come and go. I experienced that back in 2000 with the dot-com company. We made a lot of money. And then when the dot-com bubble burst, I lost a lot of money. So you can understand things come and go in markets, and they're cyclical. So if you're worried about getting a job in real estate, don't be, because there's always going to be a need for somebody to work as an intermediary between parties. So don't even think that this is a dead end job by any means. No way. I've seen markets come and go over 27 years, guys. I got to tell you, in the 90s, it was the black markets and there were all kinds of things. And then the 2001 World Trade Center bombed and turned down. And then markets stagnated for a year. 2008, when markets capped out and crashed. And then for another year or two after that, nothing happened. And then the gradual increase in markets again since then. It's going to reset again, and it's going to happen again. It's just the way markets are. There's always going to be challenges. There's going to be changes in markets. But getting back to our topic, and I'm sorry I drifted way off topic. I was just involved in a very, very interesting conversation at my break, as you can tell. But anyway, the Federal Reserve influences markets is what I'm trying to portray here. So let's talk about now government influence in the secondary markets. So what is a secondary market? So I'm going to use a whiteboard demonstration here to portray an idea. So please don't critique me on my drawing because I suck. Let's just assume here that your corner bank made $10 million in loans this past year. That's great, because if they made $10 million in loans this year, then over the course of the next 30 years, if everything holds true, they're going to reap a return of $25 million on that $10 million outlay to support the mortgage. They're going to get a nice return on their investment of 150%. That's in a perfect world. However, what normally happens is this. After the first quarter and the $10 million is expended, an investor stops in the bank and says, hey, I want to buy your debt of $10 million, and I'll pay you $14 million today for it. This is within a month of making the $10 million loans. So now the bank president sits down and says, let's see, we can hold it for 150% return over 30 years or get an immediate 40% return on our investment within a month. Sold. So Mr. 14 million buyer buys the $10 million debt for 14 million. Now the bank has 14 million to reinvest in new loans. And this cycle repeats. So now this buyer is going to hold that debt until maturity, at which time he'll realize a $11 million return, or roughly, let's say 70% return on his investment. He's going to do okay. But another investor stops by and said, I'll pay you $17 million today for your $14 million in debt, realizing a quick $3 million return, or roughly maybe 22%. That's a pretty good return. They'll take it. So now this investor is flush with $17 million in cash, and this guy's going to hold them to maturity and realize $8 million, or roughly a 50% return on his investment. And then another investor hits him up and pays him $20 million for a $3 million return, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, each one with the objective of holding the long-term debt for the payout until another investor comes along. And between the investment point and the rate of return, someone's going to call it quits at some point and say it's not worth it to buy the debt anymore. So this guy's going to realize $5 million return is $20 million investment, or a 25% return on his investment. He'll take that. But what I'm trying to discuss here is the secondary mortgage markets, where banks make loans with the intent of holding them long term for the big payout. But it is normal when people see blood in the water, and sharks especially, they go feeding. So this guy comes in, they get an immediate cash infusion on a 40% return on his investment. This guy comes in, they realize a 20-something% return on his investment. He goes shopping again. This guy comes along, makes another investment, he realizes a percent, et cetera, and everybody along the channel's making money. This is a very simplistic view of the secondary mortgage markets. Now, let me open it up for discussion. Does anybody have any schooling or understanding in what I'm talking about? Or am I blowing smoke? And really, I want your honest answer for you guys who are the economists out there. Was that a very simplistic way of explaining a secondary mortgage market? Would you agree or say no? And I'm hoping you say yes. Yes, okay, good. Very simplistic, but a very pertinent way to discuss what happens in the secondary mortgage markets. Thank you. I appreciate your input. So I'm going to moderate again here real quick. So in principle, the secondary mortgage markets are where investors buy debt, intend to hold them for profit payouts, but again, are bought out, and then that new party holds them, et cetera, et cetera. The federal government likes that idea and has three what they call government-sponsored entities, GSEs, that are involved in the secondary mortgage markets. There's Fannie Mae, the Federal National Mortgage Association, the biggest investor in the secondary mortgage markets, bar none. And then there's Ginnie Mae, the Government National Mortgage Association. And there is Freddie Mac, or the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation. All three of these partake in the secondary mortgage markets, but in different, unique ways. Let me see if this is, okay, no. So let me explain the differences in Fannie, Ginnie, and Freddie. Fannie Mae is a government-operated entity that operates under a charter by the federal government. What their job is to do is sell investment-grade bonds. Now, a bond is an investment that matures over time. So that when the Fannie Mae raises money by selling bonds to investors, they generate an income stream that they go out and buy primarily FHA-style loans. They like the FHA loans. FHA loans represent a large portion of the mortgage market, the biggest portion. So that's why Fannie Mae is the largest secondary mortgage market investor. So they buy FHA-style loans and hold them for maturity to make money. As they make money, and as those bonds mature that the investors bought, they can cash out the bonds for profit. And Fannie, hopefully, if things are right, will make profit as those mortgages mature. So in other words, they're selling mortgage-backed securities to investors. You may have heard that term, mortgage-backed securities. Well, guess what? That's one of the root causes of the 2008 market crash, was mortgage-backed securities, and something called derivatives. But we're not getting into that discussion today. You can check that out by yourself. So now that Fannie Mae is buying FHA-style loans in droves, they're supplying banks with fresh cash to go out and make new loans. So they go out and make new FHA loans. Fannie steps in by selling more bonds and buys more bank debt, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's the Ginnie Mae, or Government National Mortgage Association. Ginnie Mae sells pass-through certificates to investors to raise money. A pass-through certificate is kind of like a stock, and when it reaches a return, those profits realized are passed through to investors to pay off their investment. Kind of like a dividend on a stock, kind of, but similar. Now, Ginnie is interested in buying low income, moderate income, and high risk mortgages from banks. So if banks are making loans to low and moderate income earners, and they're high risk loans, Ginnie Mae is the buyer of those loans. So by raising money from pass-through certificates, they buy these loans, and as they generate income for Ginnie, they pay off those investors through the pass-through earnings they get. And then there's Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac, again, operates under a government charter and sells bonds, just like Fannie Mae, on the open market to investors. But when they raise money to purchase product, they're buying conventional style loans, low risk loans, very safe investment. So between the three, Fannie, Ginnie, and Freddie, they're pretty much buying all the mortgage products on the market. But there's also all kinds of other private investors out there that have lots of cash. Money market managers, trust fund managers that have lots of cash to invest. They buy mortgage-backed securities as well, or mortgages to provide security for loans. They're doing all kinds of things. So before I move on, did anybody have any questions about the three government players in the secondary mortgage markets? Does secondary only mean bulk purchases? In this case, yes. Now, understand, guys, you may have bought a house and then got a notice 2 months after you bought the house that your loan was sold to some other servicer. That could be a one-off, or it could be a bulk sale. You don't know. And it doesn't matter because your loan product didn't change. It's just who you address a check to. That's all. What's the difference between Fannie and Freddie? Fannie buys FHA. Freddie buys conventional. So they are making more money than the banks off the loan. Well, I'm not going to say they are, but they are making money. There's no question about that. Can buyers apply directly to Fannie to buy their bonds? Yeah, you can buy bonds from Freddie. What does charter under government mean? That means, let's say you're a private company, but just like Freddie Mac is, they operate under a government charter, meaning the government is your manager, right? A private company operating under government control. That's kind of what it means. It's like saying military intelligence. Just doesn't mix, right? Or jumbo shrimp. Just doesn't sound right. If Fed Reserve is private, why is it under category of government's influence? Because it influences our government. That's the only reason I can tell you. No to buy. I'm sorry, James. Let me go back. Can buyers apply? No, they don't lend money to buyers. No. Conforming loan. I'm not understanding the question. Is that a statement, Matilda? And what is conforming loan reference to? Give me some context, please, so I can understand your question if you have one. Again, guys, I don't do well with partial statements. I'm just not a mind reader. My gray matter is getting old too, you know. Kidding. Okay, guys, was there any other questions before we move on? I don't want to diss you, but I do want to get through the day. How can I marry into the Rothschilds? You're asking the wrong guy here, all right? You're asking the wrong guy. Fannie Mae deals with conforming loan. What does that mean? Fannie Mae primarily buys FHA-style loans. Now, I haven't introduced the topic of non-conforming loans. So, Matilda, your question may be a little premature. I will get to what a non-conforming loan is very shortly. So that may help you when I discuss that. All right, not seeing any other questions. Let me moderate here and definitely move on. There we go. Look, non-conforming loans. What the great next topic to discuss. In other words, loans that do not meet uniform underwriting standards. Typically, a conforming loan is a conventional loan or an FHA style loan. But things that are non-conforming are specialty loans like jumbo loans. What's a jumbo loan? Well, guess what? It's for a very large amount of money. Now, when I started selling real estate in 1993, a jumbo loan was classified as anything over $400,000. Well, today, that's just your normal loan. Jumbo loans today in this area start around $750,000 and go up. So the loan limit has increased dramatically over the last 27 years. Jumbo loans are for unusually high amounts of money compared to the normal market price. But yet banks will do non-conforming loans to those borrowers who have the credit worthiness to support it. Another type of non-conforming loan where there's a very unusual credit situation or a very complex way of financing. That would be a non-conforming loan as well as unique style properties that are being purchased. It doesn't have to be a house. It could be a very unique style building. An opera house. What's that? It's a very specifically designed type of arena or area that allows performances and is designed in a certain acoustical manner. In other words, a very unique style property. There may be very unique style mortgaging going on here to support that. In other words, a non-conforming loan. So now your question means, let me see where it was. Fannie Mae deals with conforming loans. What does that mean? Anything that's not non-conforming. Your typical FHA loan is a conforming loan. Your typical convention loan is a conforming loan. Those are conforming loans. But unusual financing arrangements are non-conforming loans. I don't know if that helped you, Matilda, but hopefully it shed a little more light on what conforming is to give better definition of what non-conforming is to give better definition of what conforming is. Okay, good. All right. So let me moderate and still move on because we still have a lot of ground to go. Now, there has been financial legislation over the years to govern what advertisers of credit can and can't do. And let me tell you something. Some of these laws are pretty strict. So I always use the following example. You get in your car and you're driving somewhere and some guy comes on the radio and you hear this. Buy this Nissan, $99 a month. Your good credit is financing terms. What the hell did he say? But hey, I can get a Nissan for $99 a month. Truth in lending legislation under what's called Regulation Z, the Truth in Advertising and Truth in Lending, says this. When a creditor offers a trigger term, an amount of payment, a monthly payment, amount of down payment, a length of term, an interest rate, whatever he's saying is called a trigger term, is specifically relating to a number in some manner. If that advertiser advertises that number or triggering term, then that advertiser must then disclose all the parameters under which that borrower must meet to get that trigger term. So when you hear buy this $99 a month Nissan, what you didn't hear because that guy had such a fast talking mouth, he said something like this. Based on an acquisition cost of, and let's say it's $28,500, with a cap cost reduction down payment of $7,500, financed through dealer financing for no less than 72 months at 6.9% interest rate. What? And you are a recent college graduate getting a $1,000 discount, and a recent military discharge getting another $1,000 discount, and a recent Nissan customer getting another $1,000 discount. Then you can get the payment as low as $99 a month. However, what if you're not a college graduate? Well, then you're going to pay more. What if you're not a Nissan customer and a college graduate? Then you're going to pay a lot more. Well, what if I'm not a Nissan customer, not a college graduate, not a military discharge? Then you're going to pay a lot more for the car and you're not going to get $99 a month. So in other words, under Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, when an advertiser, a creditor, speaks of a certain trigger term, a monthly payment, then they must give all of the financial disclosures on what you must meet to get that payment. So the triggering term is the monthly payment, amount of down payment, length of payment, interest rate, etc., etc. Once they say something like that, then they have to give the full-blown disclosure. That's why you hear that guy going, "Your credit." You can understand him if you even try it. So understand, guys, Regulation Z is there to protect consumers against unscrupulous advertisers of credit. Did anybody have a basic question on this Truth in Lending Act legislation? not seeing any, so I am going to continue. Now, when advertising, the creditor is advertising. They're termed a creditor if they extend consumer credit to more than 25 times a year, or more than 5 times a year if the transaction involves a real estate purchase, a dwelling as the purchase. And because of that, they must abide by the Disclosure Act's Regulation Z. On all consumer loans, now take this to heart when I tell you this, all consumer loans have a 3-day right of rescission. What does that mean? Well, first of all, except for purchase money mortgages, all loans have a 3-day right of rescission. So that if I sign for a loan today, I actually have 3 days to decide if I'm going to go through with this or not. So let me think about it, talk to my attorney and my business partners, and in 3 days I make a decision to proceed, then we get the loan. But I could also say in 3 days, you know what, on further review, I reject the loan and I rescind the permission to give me the loan. So under the state's law, a consumer loan has a 3-day right of rescission for all consumer financing except for a purchase money mortgage. Why? Because you're buying a house. So if you close on the transaction today and move into your house today, 3 days later you say, you know what, I don't want this financing. It's not going to fly. So all consumer loans have a 3-day right of rescission except for a purchase money mortgage. It's that simple. You want to get a home equity loan from your bank? You have a 3-day right of rescission. You want to get a secondary mortgage on your property? You have a 3-day right of rescission. But on purchase money mortgages, no. So if a person is in violation of Regulation Z and is caught, they can be fined up to $10,000 a day as long as the violation continues. That's a steep penalty, $10,000 a day. Or a fine of $10,000 may be imposed for just engaging in an unfair, deceptive practice. In addition, the creditor may be liable to the consumer for as much as 2 times the amount of the amount being financed, for a maximum of $100 and a maximum of $1,000 plus court costs, attorney's fees, and actual damages. It says if it's willful violation and it results in a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of up to $5,000 and a year's imprisonment or both. Guys, you don't want to get caught doing this stuff. So never use trigger terms in your advertising, because then you have to give the full-blown disclosure. Better if you use terms like qualified buyers can get beneficial financial terms. You didn't use any trigger terms. And you relayed the thought that if you're a qualified buyer, you can get beneficial financing terms. I'll find out if I apply. Now, there's also the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which says creditors cannot deny credit based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, marital status, or age, or dependence on public assistance or legal sources of income. Can't discriminate. There's also the Equal Credit, what's the other one called? I'm sorry, I don't have it here. Equal Credit Reporting Act, I believe, where if you're denied credit, then the creditor has to give you a written statement as to why you were denied and a copy of your cover sheet of your credit report so you can look at your credit scores and understand why you're being denied, or investigate your own credit source to find out why. There's also the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act and TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure, which we're going to finish the day discussing those. First, hang on a second. Yeah, okay, so this is the fill-ins for what I'm talking about. Regulation Z requires credit institutions to inform consumers the true cost of obtaining credit before they make the loan. and allows consumers to compare costs of various lenders and avoid the uninformed use of credit. Only on consumer loans. It does not apply to business or commercial loans. The Truth in Lending Act also says you must disclose the actual annual percentage rate that the consumer is going to get to inform them of the true cost of borrowing the money. And this is widely misunderstood because when you close on a mortgage document, it has two APRs, believe it or not. I don't know if you ever realize this. One's the annual percentage rate in which the loan is based. The other one is the actual percentage rate that you're paying, because many borrowers finance closing costs and change the conditions of the loan at the last minute, which changes the exact percentage of interest being charged. A creditor is anyone, and I did that 25 times or more, or 5 times if it's a dwelling. Talked about the 3-day right of rescission and triggering terms. I don't have to do that again. Penalties I went through, and we talked about the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Now we're at the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which was the next topic, or RESPA. Now, as a matter of history, since ever I can remember, I was introduced into the real estate industry in 1993. I got my license, guys. And since then, nothing changed, except in 2015, we changed everything. So for decades and decades, our closings were governed under what's called the RESPA rules, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, a federal law that ensures all buyers and sellers in a real estate transaction know what the final costs are going to be. Now, that was the standard practice that we used forever until 2015, which everything changed. So under the old rules, I would tell buyer and seller in a transaction that bring your checkbook to closing, because at closing, there may be charges we don't know about we have to settle up with. Yeah, this typically was a scenario that was ripe for something called kickbacks. And kickbacks happened all the time. And a kickback, my friends, is illegal. A kickback is when you get paid this way under the table, so the IRS doesn't see it. There's no reported income, no taxes paid, never any benefits. So we're supposed to do our transaction in a transparent method, so there is evidence of these things. But under the old system, and in fact, it wasn't uncommon at a closing table, that an attorney, the seller's attorney usually, would say to the realtors, listen, there's not enough money in the transaction to close the deal today. We may have to wait weeks before this is going to happen. So what I suggest is each one of you contribute $1,000 out of your commissions to make this deal happen, or else there's no deal today. Now, the attorneys are saying this in front of their clients to us directly. So what do you think your clients are saying? You're going to give the $1,000 or what? We're going to close this today? So most agents would give the $1,000. I learned very early in my career that that was illegal, but it happened all the time. So in the first closing I went to, they said this, hey, we need $1,500 from each agent to make this happen today. The other agent goes, okay, you can take it out of my commission. The guy looks at me and says, you? And I learned this from my broker. Mr. Attorney, I can appreciate your wanting to have this settled today, but let me ask you a question. If you knew that a kickback was illegal, would you ask me that same question again? Now the attorney knows that I'm aware that he's asking me for a kickback, so he cannot ask me this question again. And all of a sudden, he goes out of the room, comes back, we found the other $1,500, we can close the transaction, and I get my full check. What was he doing? He was trying to get me to kick back to his seller some money, because he told the seller, those realtors make too much commission, watch me getting some money back at closing because I think they should deserve less. And that was commonplace in a real estate transaction. Kickbacks were happening all the time. So the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act had to be changed. So under RESPA, both parties had full knowledge of all settlements costs at closing. However, under the new way called TRID, T for Truth in Lending Act, R for Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and then incorporating the integrated disclosure forms, gave us a new way to close a transaction. So as of October 2015, what happens is this. The lender, 7 days before the scheduled closing, delivers the final loan estimate to the borrower, who must review that, confirm that it's the right package, the right amount, and then return the document with a intent to proceed letter to the lender. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead one here. An intent to proceed letter, which says, I have reviewed the conditions of the loan and everything meets the requirements, and I intend to proceed to closing with this package. At that time, if not previously furnished, the buyer must submit the aliens information. What's aliens information? Well, it's about the little green men. No. On page 262 in your hardbound 14th edition of the book, it gives what the aliens information is. A, for address of the property. L, for loan amount. I, income. E, estimated property value. N, names. And S, social security numbers. So by returning the intent to proceed letter and furnishing the aliens information, the lender has determined that the loan package is complete now and can go to closing. So they give the borrower 7-day notice of the final loan estimate. Then, after returning the intent to proceed letter, 3 days before the closing under TRID, the lender provides the buyer and seller the integrated disclosure statements for the closing. So now 3 days before the closing, both buyer and seller are made fully aware of what the final closing costs are going to be. So when you get to closing, there's not going to be any big questions about unfound money or issues revolving not enough money. It's already accounted for. So it makes it almost impossible for a kickback to occur. So what happens in TRID is that they merge some of the old forms from RESPA into the new integrated disclosure statements. The lender is made responsible to deliver these documents to buyer and seller and make sure that lender's liable if certain costs exceed a tolerance limitation imposed by TRID. Closing costs can't vary by a certain percentage. What that is up to the lender. So buyer and seller know 3 days ahead of time what their final costs are going to be within a certain very small variation. TRID rules do not apply to home equity lines of credit or mortgages secured by movable dwellings like mobile homes. It does not apply to reverse mortgages, cash transactions, or commercial loans. Under TRID, some of the old forms, the HUD-1 form, GFE and TIL disclosures can still be used for HELOCs and reverse mortgages. And I said the loan estimate must be provided 3 days after the loan application is complete and 7 days, the final loan estimate, 7 days before the closing. And it's required for all federally related first and second mortgages. I said after getting the integrated disclosure statements, and the buyer and seller have then 3 business days in which they then must go to a closing. So a business day is any calendar day except for closing purposes, Sundays and holidays. Saturdays count as a business day for TRID. So in effect now, we have finished this chapter. Was there, before I pull up the review questions, any questions from you guys about what we've talked about this afternoon? That's an open-ended question because that could leave room for a lot of things. But I am going to go into the chapter review in the next minute or two. But if you have any other questions you want discussed, let's do them now regarding this information. That was a lot of info. I know it was. And it was a lot of me to get out in one breath almost. Can a jumbo loan be a conventional loan? Yeah, sure. As long as you got a 20% down payment, they'll do a conventional jumbo loan. FHA? Yeah, but there are loan limits because of, and what they do in the FHA, they put the loan limits based on the average cost of a home per county. So for an FHA loan limit, depends on what the average sale price of a house in a certain county is. So let's take Bergen County. The average sale price from Bergen County is currently about $750,000 from all sales, highs and lows combined. So that means FHA loan limits in Bergen County go up to $750,000. But in Podunk, Utah, where the average price is maybe $180,000, then FHA loan limits in Podunk, Utah are $180,000. So it varies region by region based on average sale price of a home. Only that I have to read the chapter again. Yeah, I understand that. What does alien stand for? So aliens on page 262 in your textbook are address of property, loan amount requested, income, estimated property value, names, social security numbers. That's what aliens stands for. Gosh, too much to remember. I'm soaked. Yeah, right? What do you think my brain's like? It's complete mush when after I talk about this stuff. Complete mush. I do need an infusion of scotch when I get home to fix it, though. All right. Anybody else have any questions before I'm ready to wrap up with our review questions for the chapter? All right. So give me a second while I pull this up. And we're on chapter 15. So let me pull that. All right. So here we go. Number one. I'm going to moderate the conversation and let you do just bulk questions. The term purchase money mortgage applies and I just threw up the link to our homework page where you can find the homework assignments for tonight as well as the answers to all the homework questions, just so you know, they're there. And I'm putting up my email address if you want to contact me against anything specific. I do answer the emails. May not be what you want to hear, but I will answer your email. I'm going to post one more thing. recareercenter.com, review us. This is a Google review site where I'm asking that if you could give me a review on Google, and I want you to be honest. If you find that this is a interesting class and you like the way things work, then tell us. If you like the class but think that there could be better ways of doing stuff, then I want you to tell us too. I want you to be honest in the review. The principals of the company just want positive reviews. I want the truth because I need to know, am I delivering a quality product to you? Is there ways I can improve my presentation so that we have better interplay and better understanding? And if so, I'd love to hear that because I'm interested in improving our program so we deliver the best quality product out in the market today. Guys, I wouldn't ask if it was just in vain attempt to boost my ego. I don't need any help with that. My wife says my head is bigger than it needs to be. But I just need to know if we're doing a good job, please let us know. That's all I want to know. And please, again, be honest in your review if you would, and give us one. A lot of people say they will, but they don't. But again, your input helps. It really does. That's just a request from me. All right, so let's go back to these answers and questions. Number one, purchase money mortgage applies to, and 92% of you are correct answering A, to any mortgage used to finance the purchase of real estate. A is correct. Number two, an elderly widow is on an elderly window is on Social Security. Oh, brother. An elderly widow is on Social Security and a small fixed income. She wants to stay in her long-time home, which now has a market value of more than $200,000, but she cannot afford rising property taxes. And the house needs a new roof. This person is a perfect candidate for what? Boy, that's it. It looks like a lot of people have decided to end their day early, but that's okay. Whatever you want to do. For those who are responding, good. I'm glad you're testing yourselves. It shows character, in my opinion. So from those who did respond, 88% of you are correct, answering B for boy, reverse mortgage. Yes. Number 3, real estate brokers should be particularly careful to seek an attorney's assistance when a real estate transaction involves I think I was pretty clear when I represented this topic to you. So real estate brokers should be particularly careful to seek an attorney's assistance when a real estate transaction involves and from those who responded, about 75% of you are correct in answering D, a wraparound mortgage. Correct. Number 4, the buyer does not immediately receive a deed when purchasing with a boy, if this is a horse race, it would be neck and neck between 3 players right now. Sale leaseback is coming on strong, where seller financing is stumbling and land contracts bringing up the back. So what are we getting here? Let's see. So the buyer does not immediately receive a deed when purchasing with and the answer here is land contract. 29% of you got that correct. Land contract or installment sales is a special kind of seller financing. So just seller financing mortgage is not enough to comply. D for dog is correct. Number 5, what is the function of mortgage brokers? I actually gave you a definition at one point. What does a mortgage broker do? What is the function of a mortgage broker? And 67% of you are correct, answering B, bring borrowers and lenders together. I did give that definition when I introduced the concept. Number 6, when a bank allows a buyer to spend up to 28% of gross income on housing costs, is applying a formula known as excuse me. And 77% of you are correct, answering qualifying ratios. B for boy. Yes, good for you. Number 7, a couple purchased a residence for $375,000. They made a down payment of $45,000 and agreed to assume the seller's existing mortgage, which has a current balance of $123,000. The couple financed the remaining $200,000 of the purchase price by giving a mortgage and note to the seller. The type of loan by which the seller becomes a mortgagee is called kind of confusing, right? There's only one answer here that's correct. And I'm going to give you a hint. The first sentence tells you what kind of loan it is. Yes, okay, some of you guys are getting it. I see that. I see the details of the Q&A, guys. I know who's answering what, who's changing their answers and everything. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to observe. So in effect, it said a couple purchased a residence for $375,000. Hello, they're purchasing a residence. No matter how convoluted this financial arrangement is, it's being used to purchase a home. So therefore, 80% of you are correct saying it is a purchase money mortgage. D is correct. Very complex, but the first statement said a couple purchasing a residence. It's a purchase money mortgage. That's plain and simple. Number 8, a developer obtains one mortgage for a whole subdivision. As he sells each lot, he obtains a release of one parcel from the what? And 72% of you are correct answering D, blanket mortgage. Very good. Number 9, an investor buys a local factory from a company that intends to remain and rent the building from him. The investor has put together a and 95% of you got it correct. Yes, B, sale leaseback is correct. That's what he put together. Correct. Number 10, which of the following best defines the secondary market? And from the responses, about 90% of you, very good, got it correct. B for boy, lenders who buy and sell mortgages after they've been originated. Correct. Good. Number 11, what is Fannie Mae? What is Fannie Mae? D, an old woman who lives in a cave. No, it's not D. I love that response though. It's A, the leading purchaser of mortgages on the secondary mortgage market, and 86% of you were correct in answering that. It's a little old woman who lives in a cave. I like that. Number 12, the public can invest in mortgage pools by buying certificates issued by who? Remember the three sources of raising money. Who sells certificates? The public can invest in mortgage pools by buying certificates issued by 60% of you are correct answering C, the Government National Mortgage Association, Ginnie Mae. C is correct. Remember, Freddie and Fannie sell bonds. Ginnie sells certificates. Number 13, which of the following is not a participant in the nation's secondary mortgage markets? And from those responding, which is the following is not a participant in the nation's secondary mortgage market? 65% of you answered correctly A, FMHA. That's the Farmers Home Loan Association, now called the Rural Economic Community Development. So A is correct. It's not a secondary player. FHLMC, that's Freddie Mac. Number 14, which of the following represents the purpose of Freddie Mac? Which of the following represents the purpose of Freddie Mac? And 75% of you answered B for boy, buys and pools blocks of conventional mortgages, selling bonds as such for mortgage as security. Yes, they buy conventional mortgages. Number 15, Regulation Z protects the consumer from And 83% of us got it correct. A, misleading advertising. Correct. Boy, good responses today, guys. Good responses. Number 16, Regulation Z provides that and from those responding, 68% are correct answering C. If certain financial terms are mentioned, then others also have to be included. The triggering term and then all of their disclosures. Number 17, which of the following is a triggering term that mandates inclusion of full details in an advertisement? What's a triggering term again? Has to do with numbers, doesn't it? So C and D can't be it. It's got to be either A or B. A, if you're assuming a 4% loan, well, that's fixed. You can't change it, and your qualifying has to meet that guideline. Therefore, B is the only answer. Less than 10% down. In other words, you have to pull all the financial disclosures, how you can finance this property with less than 10% down. Number 18, if a triggering term is included, an ad must go on to explain we're getting there, guys. Only four or five answers after this, and we're done. But then if you want to stick around and ask me some questions, you're entitled to. Other than that, we're going to be done for the day when we're done with these. So from your responses, 95% of you are correct answering D. All of the above is correct. Good. Number 19, under Regulation Z, the borrower who places a mortgage under Regulation Z, the borrower who places a mortgage, and the answer is only 25% of you are correct answering D. Must be quoted the annual percentage rate as well as any simple interest rate. 20, at what point is the lender required to provide a loan estimate to prospective borrowers? Another good response on this. And from those responding, 86% are correct answering C, within 3 business days of a completed loan application. Good. Number 21, getting down there, guys. Last 2 questions. A few changes were made to the original loan estimate. Which of the following is one that will trigger the need for a new loan estimate and a delay in closing? And about 73% of you are correct answering B for boy, loan product was changed. Very good. And the last question, which I'm going to have to give the answer because of the misspellings. The borrowers want to talk with several lenders about various loan products before making a final decision. At this point, how much money may each lender require from the buyer borrowers? And the answer is C, and I'll tell you why. That's supposed to say enough for a credit report, not repair. So everybody has to pay a fee to have the credit report run. So at that point, they can collect that fee. C is the answer, not repair, report. Sorry about the typos, guys. It's not that bad. We got through it. And the good majority of you guys got the correct answers anyway. So good job. Well done today. So we're finished for the day. Quickly. Chapters 14, 15 for homework. You can find them at the recareercenter.com/homework spot. Also tomorrow, chapters 16, 17, and 18. 3 chapters tomorrow. Going to be a busy day. Other than that, you're finished for the day. We met our obligations. So have a great evening. I'm sticking around for any last minute questions from the gallery if you got them. If you could, give us a nice review at recareercenter.com/review us. If you want to reach out to me, tjensen at recareercenter.com, or stay with me now and just ask. A package mortgage can be used for vacation homes too sometimes, not just condos, right? Yes, correct. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Oh, thank you, Allison. Appreciate it. Whoa, let me go back here. It looks like we got a whole bunch of ones. Again, 22. 22 was C, enough for credit report. I will definitely associate this chap with Scotch. All right. Thank you much. I enjoyed your class. Oh, thank you very much, Darsh. Have a great, okay, you too. Thank you. I need to read again the chapter 14. A lot of info. I know, right? There is. All right, guys. Thank you for compliments. I appreciate question. I see a review on Friday, but it also says chapter 10. Is it a review everything or is it just chapter 10? No, I think you're reading that incorrectly. We do have a review class Friday. It's only half a day. Your chapter 10, I don't know what that's about. It's probably another class, but I don't do chapter 10 on Friday. That may be erroneous. I have a question about the homework that you just signed. Will you answer questions about that? Yes, tomorrow morning. First thing, I'm going to go over the homework. You don't have to hand them in. You keep the homework as a review source so you can constantly go back and check yourself, and we will go over the answers first thing in the morning. And I always ask if you have questions about homework, and we'll straighten them out then. Okay, guys, thanks. Have a great evening. Chapter 4 on Thursday? I'm sorry, John. Thursday is chapter 19, 20, 21, if we're here. That's an evening class. Yes, you're seeing an evening schedule, not the day schedule. Anybody with a question before we take off, guys? If not, I'm going to go home too, you know. Can you talk about the pyramid loans that you mentioned? It's not a pyramid loan. Pyramid is pyramiding through refinancing. What I was talking about in the case where the veteran was, 0 down payment acquires a property of a multifamily. The tenant pays all his bills, including his mortgage. If he has a job, he keeps his money in savings, and then in a few years refinances the property at 100% of value, takes the cash out along with the savings and buys another house. You repeat, do it again. Pyramiding through refinancing. In fact, you can Google that concept, it might give you more detail. I'm just giving you a very basic outline. Just wanted to let people know 4 is on Thursday, not 10 in the evening. Okay, thank you. The second buy is a VA loan or no? I'm sorry? What does that mean? The second buy is a VA loan or no? Oh, I'm sorry. No, remember, the veteran gets 1 VA loan at a time. Once he pays one off, he can reestablish his eligibility and get another one. But typically, the VA won't give more than 1 loan at a time. On very rare occasions will they do it, but very rare. All right. Any questions before I bolt out of here? If not, then I'm going to say have a great evening. See you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. All right. Have a good night, guys. Oh, hang on. Tyra's got a question. No? Good night. Okay, great. Have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow.